What's up, guys? I'm back with another vlog. This time it's an animation vlog, but you might also notice I'm not in my car. I thought I would step up the quality just a tiny bit based on some feedback I got. So also, maybe this video won't be 30 minutes long. And what this is going to be are my top 5 animation mistakes. These are mistakes I've made. Like, I've made every one of these, and I keep making them sometimes. You know what I mean? But I feel like, these are pretty standard things you can avoid. I don't think any one is more important than the other one. I keep looking over here because I have a list. I have like a active list. That's not the list. So, okay. Number 1. The number 1 mistake I used to make is not storyboarding or planning out the animation in advance before starting. Like, my background, before I started doing a lot of animation, I did a lot of comics. And the thing about comics is you can sort of freestyle a comic. Like, if you don't have to have a script, really. Like, you could just take out a blank sheet of paper and sort of just attack the paper and, like, wing it. But you can't really do that with animation. Now, I know some people personally who are actually able to do that. They don't do any kind of planning, but they're anomalies. That's a rare thing. Like, really, if you have a problem starting projects and never finishing it, and you don't storyboard, that's 80% of your problem right there. You have to storyboard your project. It doesn't need to be like full production boards or fully polished, but you have to know how many shots you have to do and how far you have to go and what shots are going to be most complex, which ones are going to be simple. Just knowing that puts your entire project in perspective and gives you a roadmap of what you need to do and how far you need to go. Like, just knowing that motivates you to finish. If you're just in that limbo where you're just drawing and drawing and drawing and you've been doing it for like months and months or whatever, not knowing how much farther you have to go is an incentive to quit, and that's what you don't want to do. So that is number 1. Storyboard. Storyboard every single thing you do. Like I said, it doesn't need to be fully polished. It could be stick figures. I did a lot of animatics that were just stick figures, but you have to plan it. You have to do something. Number 2, being afraid to draw or redraw extra shit, or having to redraw something from scratch. I think what it is the idea that, like, you have to divorce yourself from the idea that having to draw is going to be work. So, like, if you're animating and you see that you need another frame or that you got to completely redraw something, a lot of people will be just discouraged to have to do that. And they'll just, be like, well, it's good. You know what I mean? And sometimes when you're pressed for time, you have to do that. I have to do that a lot. And usually, like, a lot of the time, doing that one extra drawing or having to redraw something won't take as long as you feel like it will. Like, you spend so much time thinking about how much you don't want to redraw something that, if you just did it, it would save you a lot of trouble on the front end instead of, like, not wanting to do it and then having to come back and redraw it anyway. I think people get concerned about time, but, like, if you draw a pose and it's messed up and you can see where you messed up and you redraw it, not only did you learn how to fix it, but the time it's going to take you to redraw it is going to be faster because you've already done it. Like, the parts that work, you already know how to draw that. You're just correcting what didn't work. So, just take the extra time to fix things and redraw things if necessary. Number 3, this is animation and it's time consuming. This step, keep it short. If this is your first animation that you've ever done, you shouldn't be shooting for the moon trying to do like 5 or 10 minutes. Or even 30. Like, I've seen people trying to do 30-minute episodes. I've never made a 30-minute episode in my life. Like, that's crazy. For one person, you're gonna spend like the next 6 years of your life trying to do this 30-minute episode. People have these grandiose stories, and you really gotta just condense it down. Like, if you have this epic story that's gonna span, it's 30 minutes an episode, and it's gonna be 2 seasons, what you need to do is you need to take that, condense it to like four episodes that are 45 seconds a piece or something. Like, you really gotta make the shit doable. That's what it comes down to, because you're never gonna finish that. You're not a studio, especially if you've never done this before. Even studios don't do that. Like you know, the reason a studio, an anime studio, could produce stuff like that is because there's like 400 people working 10 hours a day, and like if you don't have those resources, you're not going to be able to match that output. So what you got to make your stuff realistically doable for a single person. Unless you really want to commit like the next 4 or 5 years of your life to one thing, it's really hard to do. I don't recommend it, at least not, you know, in the beginning, starting out. I haven't done that yet, and I don't think I'm going to do it anytime soon. But like I said, you want to make the shit doable. You want to be able to, you want to tailor it so you can finish it. You know, that's the trick. So that's number 3. Mistake number 4 is keep a consistent schedule. It doesn't have to be like a strict schedule. When I say consistent schedule, I mean like you at least touch it every day. What I mean by touch it, like maybe you come home from work and you spend like 12 minutes just doing cleanup or inking the drawings, but you at least touch it. You did something. Like you wanna be touching your project every single day. Like now, you know, if you have a life, if you can't just sit in a room and draw all day, then you know, your time will vary from day to day. So one day you might have 2 hours to work, and then another day you might have 30 minutes to work. But the thing that's going to make you finish this project is consistently touching it every day. You got to play the long game, because this shit is time consuming. Like it's even like no matter how limited your animation is, if it's flash, if it's puppets, if it's just flapping mouths, no matter how limited it is, it's still time consuming. It's going to take forever. So I think in the beginning you really need to realize that and know, like if you're doing your 60-second short, you have to know this isn't a thing you're going to finish in a week. You know what I mean? You really got to think about it realistically and think, okay, maybe this will take me 2 or 3 months if I just work on it. But you just have to be consistent with how you work. Just, you know, touch it, even if it's every other day. It doesn't need to be every day, but as long as it's consistent every other day where you're always working on it. Because sometimes, another thing that happens with me is I'll be tired because, you know, I animate for a living. So like I spend 8 hours of my day drawing, and it's really hard for me to come home and draw more, you know what I mean? But what I'll do sometimes is if I'm not feeling motivated, I'll just go, well, I'm gonna go upstairs and just do a little bit and just mess around. And what happens is once you sit down and start actually working, you sort of click into this mode and you're like, oh shit, it's been like 2 hours. I didn't mean to work this long. And that's the cool thing that can happen too. But like I said, just be consistent and always be working on your project, and don't fall into that limbo like I did with like some comics and stuff where, you know, 2 weeks go by and you haven't touched it. Because after that, it's really hard to sort of get back into that flow. Okay, number 5, we're on the home stretch. So, you know, you have a project that you're working on. Let's say you're doing a short film, right? And I find this happens with groups of teams, but like individuals also. You'll say, okay, I'm gonna make this cartoon. And instead of focusing on making the product, people get caught up in the things you're supposed to think about after the cartoon is done. So they'll say things like, oh, we gotta make a website. Oh, we gotta start marketing. We gotta get advertising. We gotta make posters. We gotta make t-shirts. And all these things that are like side quests to the main objective. People get really hung up on the marketing and advertising and social media and pushing the product when there's no product yet. You haven't made anything yet. Focus on making the product first, and then once that's done and finished, then you can worry about the fun shit, because that's the thing. Everybody wants to do that first because that's the fun part. You know what I mean? Like going out and talking about the project and you know, going off and promoting it and making posters, making merch and trying to do all this shit. That's the end game. That's the stuff from when you're done. Don't do that shit before you have the actual product. This applies to comics and everything. Like, you know how many comics I've been a part of where, like, I'm like, dude, let's draw the comic. And they're like, well, no, we gotta make hats and t-shirts and do all this bullshit. And it's like, you're marketing for a thing that doesn't exist yet. We have to make the thing first. Like, you ever seen anybody advertise, like, I don't know, like a car that hasn't been made yet? Because you know what? You know, doing the animation is not always going to be fun. You know what I mean? It's not the fun part. It's fun sometimes, but then other times you might have 5 minutes of lip sync that you got to do. That shit is not fun. Actually, as a matter of fact, I just left work. That's what I was doing when I left. I was just doing fucking lip sync for like an hour. It's not fun doing lip sync. Lip sync is horrible. But you know what? Like, you have to sit down and do it. You can't just be like, well, I'm going to build a website for this thing I haven't finished yet. You know, don't do that. Like, don't make websites for things you haven't made yet. Like, if you think about it logically, it doesn't make sense. Don't advertise a thing you haven't made yet. If all you have is concept art and you haven't physically made the thing, don't be making t-shirts and posters and all this bullshit, because you're making them for a thing that doesn't exist yet. It exists in your head, and it's like, dude, we don't have anything yet. We don't have anything to sell. Make the thing first. So that's it. A little bit more professional, not in my car. I'm not eating food. Somebody made a comment about how many drinks, how many sips I was taking in that last video. So I'm not eating any food. I'll try not to do that for the next vlogs or whatever. But yeah, that's it. I'll see you guys later. And, you know, take it easy and draw and stuff.